Today's session will be about publishing during a PhD, and we are very fortunate to have three very good speakers to be with us today. First presenter, we have Dr. Sarah Quach from the Griffith University, Queensland, Australia. Dr. Sarah Quach has been recognized as a rising star in the marketing discipline by the Australian newspaper in 2022. She has received the 2022 Emerging Marketer Researcher Award from the ANSMAC, or the Australian and New Zealand Marketing Association, which is one of the very biggest awards there. And she also received the 2022 Griffith Business School Pro Vice Chancellor Research Excellency Award as well. Congratulations, Sarah, there. And her email is right there on the page here, if anyone wants to reach out to her. The next presenter, we have Dr. Felix. Dr. Felix is currently an DECRA fellow, which is one of the very top researcher in the country, and also a senior lecturer in marketing at the University of Queensland. His research primarily investigates the influence of feeling and emotion on consumer behavior. He has co-authored more than 100 journal articles, and based on the ABDC journal publication since 2020, he is the most productive business scholar in Australia from the peer ranking. His email is also there as well. Now, third presenter, we have Professor Catherine Prentice from the University of Southern Queensland. She is also head of marketing discipline and also the associate editor for 4 journals, and she is also a regional editor for 1 journal as well. So the 4 journals are in Q1. One of them is in B rank.
For me.
Okay. Now, first journal is Service Industry Journal, Tourist Review, Journal of Hospitality Marketing and Management, and also Journal of Global Scholar of Marketing Science. So those are the one that she is an associate editor. She has a very good and strong, editorial board relationship and experience that we could learn from her today as well. And her email is right there. Okay. I was thinking, since I already introduced a 3 speaker, I might as well introduce myself. My name is Park Taishon, and that is my email. So I'm associate editor of the 2 journals listed there, Australasian Marketing Journal and Journal of Strategic Marketing. I noticed people tend to put the photos when they were young, so I put in a photo when I was 18 there. So that's good. Now let's have a start. Oh, we already have 52 people. So I remember we bet on some people. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about today. Now, I just want to tell the audience that I actually did not tell the questions to any of the speaker because I'm trying something new and I want to get the most organic answer from them. So this is why we did not tell them yet. So I hope the 3 speakers not get upset with me. So first of all, we're going to go in the order of Sarah, Felix, and Catherine. There are a few set of questions. Some of the set of questions we go in this order, and then the next set will be like Felix, Catherine, and Sarah. So first of all, we would like to talk about the motivations, the motivation of doing publication during your PhD. So Sarah, I understand that you have published 2 or 3 papers out of your PhD or during your PhD time. Could you please share with us what were your motivation to do those papers during the time of your PhD?
Thank you, Park, for the warm welcome and the introduction. And good afternoon, good morning, everyone attending this session today. Thank you for having me. Thanks for the question, Park. I guess very similar to many of us here, the motivation for publication during the PhD is to get a job after the PhD. So, it's when I did my PhD, it was actually the traditional PhD thesis. So at the moment, usually PhD candidate have the option to do the thesis comprising of papers or traditional format. So at the time that I did my PhD, it was just one option to do the traditional format. So there was also like a lot of arguments, like some of the different ideas about whether we should publish during the PhD or whether we should actually wait until after PhD, like finish the whole thesis to publish. But generally, when I did my PhD, apart from publishing from my own PhD, I also work on some other project with other like colleagues and friends, and many just like a side projects, because sometimes it just feel like it's too much, like to just do one thing like for 3-4 years, and doing something as a side track helped me to actually refocus on my PhD better. So apart from like preparing, like having good profiles after for myself when I finished the PhD, it's also a good way for me to explore different areas and to see which one would be the one that I could focus potentially to prepare for my for the career after the PhDs as well. So
thank you, Sarah.
Yeah,
thank you. So the career and also the motivation that I think is very good, and I'm sure that a number of us in this room sharing the same feeling as well. Felix, what was some of your motivation?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for inviting me, and I guess thank you as well for the questions. So I think my answer is kind of like somewhat echoing what Sarah mentioned. Especially, I have two motivation. The first one is kind of like similar what she said about kind of because obviously when we write paper, yes, thesis is mainly from us, right? We have to do the thesis on our own. But when we start when we start working in the academia, that we have to actually work with other people. So I think starting to actually build my research network, I think that's one of my motivation. And the second one is more really kind of like part of the learning itself, because I got to realize when I start submitting my paper, it's not even part of my thesis, right? It's part of my actually master's thesis. When I first submitted, I just realized that, like, writing a paper is one thing, but publishing it is actually another thing. It takes even longer and sometimes more difficult to actually publishing a paper, more than just finishing one, right? So I think once I get to realize that, I kind of like have this motivation, then that means I have to also have this like review process experience, being in the review process as much as possible, so that I can also publish in the future, because it's not just writing a thesis. I got to realize that it's like publishing, it's much more difficult and time consuming sometimes than just finishing a paper. So I guess for me, those are the two.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's interesting that and I agree that you mentioned about writing is not the same thing to publishing, and it's also give you experience to improve during your PhD as well. And we will touch that later on into today's session. Catherine?
Oh, well, when I was doing my PhD, I did not publish. However, I have some advice, just normally how I advise my PhD students. Since you don't spend so much time doing your, doing a PhD, do the same thing, why not just publish? If you want to stay in academia, publishing is the one of the critical means for you to sustain this field. Doing traditional thesis, you would spend the same amount of time. So I believe that since you spend the time and learn the methodology, and want to just learn how to publish, and it will become a good foundation for your future career. So that's just I didn't publish when I was doing PhD, because I was planning to go back to industry, but then because become a mother, then had to become academic. Then I started publishing, publishing crazily, and then become a fun. I used to publish to survive, to publish, perish, and then I realized, that's no longer the case. Probably for some early academic career researchers, still need to publish. As you publish a lot, probably think of publishing is fun, but in the beginning stage, during PhD, because you have to spend all the time doing your research, you have to finish your PhD and then spend the time for something that are going to conducive to your future career. So that's my advice. And that's my advice for all PhD students. And like I said, because I didn't publish during my PhD, and I had to work 10 times harder to publish afterwards. So this experience might become motivation for you. That's what I can say.
Catherine. Yes, I think you made a 2-3 good point there. First one, I catch that from the last point is that publish after the PhD might take 10 times harder. It's true, and also take 10 times longer as well during the wait time, because nowadays you might need to have some papers just to get a first job, and if you don't have any, that first job waiting time might take quite some time to before it's arrived. And also you made a very good point about publish or perish. Nowadays, it's not like that anymore. When you become senior lecturer or also professor, you do not have to publish anymore, but just to get the first job from, first job to a lecturer or promote to a senior lecturer, you might need to still have some papers. There are some other aspects to look at as well, but not just papers moving forwards. Let's move on to the more exciting question that was more of like, to open the ground and everything like that. So this question, we'll go with Felix first. Okay, so in your opinion, as a DECRA holder as well, which I will briefly touch about that in the later on session, could you please talk about the benefit of publishing before submitting a thesis?
Yeah, I think for me, I guess it's kind of like touching on what I have kind of like briefly discussed from my side. It's more publishing a paper is completely different than just writing a paper. And I think for thesis especially, we have spent 3 years, 4 years writing a thesis, right? So we hope to publish the thesis, but having a publication before submitting a thesis, we kind of like, I think for me personally, I kind of like realized that like it prepares me for my thesis. Like, one, if it get rejection, it's not that hard, because I know it. I mean, like, you already have experienced rejection before, but like, if I imagine, like, if I work a paper like after 3 years, submit a paper and then get rejection, oh, that would hurt so much. But like, I guess for me, because like, and and when I submit my thesis the first time, it was rejected, right? But I already know, like, rejection is part of this publication process. It's good to have accepted, but sometimes you get rejection. So the benefits of publishing, or even like, try to submit a paper before a thesis and not just only our thesis, it's kind of like give us to kind of like more like better expectation. It helps us to prepare better for when we submit our thesis for publication. And secondly, this is like kind of like what Sarah mentioned, like it also helps us to find a job, because often like when we submit the thesis, now we start looking for a job, right? During around the same time. So when we submit our thesis and we have already paper beforehand, at this point of time, especially when we are expected to have something at least, it will be helpful as well for our job market.
Thank you, Felix. And I also totally agree with you in terms of, because when I relate back to my own experience of submitting my own PhD thesis, two of the examiner, I have one paper except that when I submit the thesis, and two of the examiner actually commented that they appreciate the paper the thesis have been reviewed by a peer review articles and then been published and been proven. So I feel like the review process of the thesis became somewhat a lot easier. So I think that is a learning curve for people to take as well. I move back to Sarah. Would you like to add in anything to what Felix have mentioned?
I think Philip pretty much covered the key points of the benefits of publishing before submitting a thesis. And especially like I think nowadays we also I know that a lot of PhD candidates are using the format of including papers in the thesis. So actually it's kind of like like one stone, two birds with one stone, because you have some publication, and then when you submit the thesis, when like Park mentioned, when the examiner look at your publication and they see that the papers has been published in some other journals, then they would have a very more like a favorable attitude towards the thesis. So it helped with the examination process as well. I think when you after you submit a thesis, you would have about like 6 months, 3 to 6 months to wait for to hear from the outcome. So when you have some experience with publishing from your thesis or from a side project before submitting thesis. While waiting for your thesis, you can also focus on, doing some publication during that time as well, with your already have the experience before your thesis submission. So that I think that's also a very good way to prepare yourself for the future career.
Thank you, Sarah. And there are a number of questions coming in the chat. I will read those sooner or later. Thank you. I totally agree with what you have mentioned. Can we touch a little bit of the dark side here in terms of the negative aspect of focusing too much on publishing before submitting your PhD? I asked Sarah first, and then I will move to Catherine.
I guess the negative aspect is more about the work-life balance, because obviously you do publication and then you also have to work on your thesis. So that actually quite a lot of work, and time management is extremely important because you need to make sure that you can publish, but also manage expectations from the supervisors and the time frame where we have to complete the PhD by. So I get that probably there's some pressure there when we focus a lot on publishing before thesis submission. And yeah, so I think that's the key, the main negative aspect.
Thank you. Catherine.
Yeah, just like Sarah mentioned, I believe this is more psychological. So in case, I think most PhD students, and if the topic is not very appealing, they might encounter rejections. So the rejection might become sort of like psychological barrier for them entering academic career and become discouragement. So that might be the case. And also that might, in a way that extended prolong the process of finishing PhD. Some of my PhD students have the problems, so they focus too much on publication and they get rejected, and they become so discouraged, so disheartened. They just feel, either some psychological issues or don't want to become academic. So that might be some, just negative aspect.
That is so true that you mentioned that. When I relate back, one of my PhD candidates also in the past have really lose the motivation after do some publication and wasn't success. But at the same time, some people become a lot stronger as well. We will start with Catherine, just to take the turn. So 3 useful tips to help with publishing during a PhD. I noticed that you mentioned you did not publish during your time, but you are such a well-known professor in the world now. So I'm sure that we can learn from some of the tips that you have observed in the past years.
The tips to help publishing, I think it's about networking. Expand your network. That's one. And the second is make you more confident. And, this is a good time to brand yourself. Doing PhD, one of the things, when you finish PhD, think what you're going to do. Either you go to industry or become academic. You need to brand yourself. You spend 3 years, sometimes more than, it's longer. So you need to think about how you're going to stand out in the world. When you start a PhD, first thing is about, what's the original contribution you make to the field, to the literature. So it's good that when you publish, indirectly you're branding yourself. And also, so brand yourself and prepare yourself, become more confident. And the last tips would be just to, I suppose that would build closer relationship with the supervisors. And the supervisors would become your referees for your future career. So that's the, if you name 3, that would be 3.
Thank you, Catherine. I really love when you talk about brand yourself, because in the future, we are going to be known in some aspect and some area. And also it's very important, like your first point that you mentioned, build a network. And this can be done through you simply send an email, talk to people, or very effective ways to attend a conference, to get to know people, to get to know a bigger person, and so on. And in fact, just 2 seconds ago, the first professor that I ever made a contact with at the ANSMAC conference just texted me about impact factor, which I have to go and check in the email later on. It is very important to build network. So it's helped us to learn something that we did not know, learn about perspective that we did not know. Felix, we will finish you off with these 3 tips, please, that you might have.
frankly speaking, I think what Catherine mentioned is like, I think really good. I would just basically kind of like highlight the one about like, make a brand of yourself. It's essentially, it's not just when you promote yourself essentially, right? But also this is really important because on the one hand, this could also be help you to be more efficient. And then this kind of like relates with, the previous questions, why it can be very challenging psychologically to when you want to publish before submitting your thesis, right? Because especially when you try to do too much, and especially if it's not in your area, right? So I think if you can do something in your area, especially, not only it will help you to, develop your personal brand as you later on obviously market yourself and find a job in academia, even in the industry, like, like the more you actually do in line with your expertise or what you want to kind of like be known for, that's actually not only better, but also easier because like obviously during your PhD, we would have read so many papers, we would have developed a specific expertise in a specific areas, right? So if, as much as possible, I think I would really like to highlight to build an expertise in a specific area as your personal brand, because not only it will be actually beneficial to find job, but also it will be beneficial to make it feel less, stressful, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I may jump in, for example, Felix is known for emotional research area and also experimental. So let's say if I want to start a new project and I want to do some experimental, I will, oh, let's go and have a chat with Felix. Or if I want to do about emotional intelligence and AI, Catherine is very good. And she have a book that she just written there as well on AI. So if you're known for some specific area, we will go to those people. Sarah is known for conceptual framework and those type of paper, so review paper and all that. I'm an unknown person, so we'll not talk about myself. Now let's move on to the Q&A of the co-learning discussion. I noticed that there are quite a few comments in the chat box, so I'm gonna go through this, and I might pick some of the speaker to answer if I can, or how to share some of them. Now, first question is from Andy. Good afternoon. Shall I start writing a paper from a master thesis before start a PhD? If I may give you an example from my own PhD candidate who is in here as well. His name is Lars. Right now he's at UQ as well, same place too. Felix, he written to Q1 Journal of Retailing and Consumer Services out of his master thesis. And because of that, he got a very good, well, it's give him a high chance to get a full scholarship at a university, a good university. In fact, I think he got 3 scholarship offer from 3 different universities. So the answer is yes, we should write something before, if you can, you should write something out of your master thesis before you even start your PhD. But is it necessary? The answer is no. But is it better? The answer is yes. So in any PhD application, especially in Australia, we look at your research experience. What have you done in a master level? Have you published anything before? Have you attended any conference? So if you have done some of those, you will have a higher chance in getting a scholarship there. There's a question, direct inbox to me asking, is there any issue if a PhD student invite an additional author that is not his supervisor to be part of a paper that published from his PhD? I would say you have to talk to your supervisor first. If you want to add anyone in, if you want to publish with anyone that not your supervisor as part of your paper from your thesis, there should be a good reason on what is this external person could add into your paper. I'm sure that your supervisor should be okay, given that you are my student as well. So you should talk to your supervisor if you add someone into the panel of your paper. Ideally, whoever that you add in should contribute something into the paper, all right? Now, if your question is about adding a person that not your supervisor on a sidetrack project during your PhD, yes, no problem at all. You don't even have to tell your supervisor, but it's good to keep your supervisor informed on what are some of the projects you're working on, who are you working with. This is just for the supervisor to track on whether you have enough hours to work on your PhD and some other things that you're working on or not. And the next question is, do you have to publish in the top ranked journals or should we try for any ranking journal? Now, I don't want to be rude. Let me answer one more question and I throw it to the speaker.
No problem. I guess invite.
So to answer this question, you should look at which country you want to be working at. If you want to be working in Australia, you should refer to the ABDC ranking journals because we value those journals to be published. You know, you have to publish in those journals in order to be in Australia or some university in Australia. If you want to be in China, we use another ranking because I work with many Chinese candidates. If you wanted to be in US, you might using, you know, other Texas, Dallas or whatever ranking there. So you might need to check which ranking journal that you need. But the answer in general answer is yes, you should publish in a not a top rank, but maybe in a good ranked journals, in a top say 70% type of journals, Q1, Q2, in order to have a good chance in get a job and all that. But of course, all universities would hope to get higher ranked journal. Like I give you an example, in my university, University of Southern Queensland, we are hoping for everybody to publish in Q1. I mean, once per year or something like that as a KPI. So yes, we should try to target like a high ranked journal, but it doesn't have to be like the top 1%. Now, Sarah, today we have a chat about this topic as whether you asked about a question there. Now, I might pick on Sarah first and then Felix and Catherine. So Sarah, could you please help with this question? Is it a good idea to email the abstract or the title of the paper to the editor before you actually submit to the paper?
This is a very good question, and thanks, Park. During my so when I do my publication, typically the time when I actually email some information about my paper to the editors is when I'm submitting to a special issue. It is because special issue generally would have a really targeted area that they would like to publish in, and the editors might have some ideas in mind, like some papers, some specific topics that they are looking for. So I generally, sometimes I would check with the editor to see whether my paper could be a suitable paper for their special issue, because sometimes if not, then it will get rejected, and we don't want to waste the time of ourselves and also the editors and other reviewers. So if you are targeting a special issue and you're not sure whether your paper is suitable, then I would suggest to do that, to ask for the guest editor opinions before submitting to the system. For a normal issue, it is not very common for myself to send the abstract or title, but in the case that I would, because generally, if it is something like really new, something really interesting, but may not like been published in a journal before, but we thought it's going to be like something that the editor is looking for, then it could be a good idea to ask the editor. But generally, I think it could be more common when it comes to special issue than the normal issue.
Thank you, Sarah. Can I ask a darker side? Have you ever sent an email before you submit to a journal, like send an email to the editor saying, here's what you're doing, and it's end up as a more positive towards your review? You don't have to answer this, but my question is, have you ever sent an email to the editor saying this is what you're doing, and it's end up as a positive way for your your submission?
Well, general, I think for a few times I ask the editors about my paper, and if they say it's a good fit for the journal, then you generally pass the desk, the desk review, and it will be sent to reviewers. So I guess it's a positive side that the papers is considered suitable for the special issue.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Let me bring Catherine in for a second because she is an associate editor for so many journals. Catherine, do you feel annoying at all when people send an email to you saying here is a paper that they want to submit to your journal? Do you feel annoying or do you feel happy about it?
Well, it depends. I do read. If anyone sends me an email, I like to read. So if the topic is interesting, if the methodology is rigorous, I would reply and respond. I would encourage. However, if it's otherwise, I will still respond. Whether it's a good idea or not, then it depends on the editor. So if the editor is responsive, and then that's a good idea, because some editors are very enthusiastic, some editors are passive. So I remember I gave a speech the other day to students in Griffith University. I was talking about that. It's good to check the editor's personality. So some editors, they're very passive, they're very irresponsive. It's a low point. You send that might take forever, just waste of time. But other cases, if editors are responsive, it's good. It's always good. So even if the editor not interested in topic, at least somehow you leave an impression in editors. Somehow maybe one day, conference or somewhere else, so your name might come across and become, just a formal kind of impression. It's always good to reach, even it's annoying. It's okay to do so. Be proactive is good.
Thank you, Catherine. We're going to move on. Deeparvita, I think you're from Bond University that we have a chat a while ago. Not a problem. Myself, I got the same paper rejected 4 times before my first paper published. And in fact, funny enough, Catherine was the person who teach me how to do my first A-level paper. Actually, my first A paper published with Catherine here. So she's the guru of the guru. She's pretty good. Don't feel bad there. Sam, very good to see you again. I think I met you not too long ago. Now you're asking a question. Should you publish? What is your opinion on publishing a topic that may not be directly to your PhD and working with team outside? I think this is a very good idea. In fact, I think majority of my PhD candidates before I joined earlier, they are working on a sidetrack project as well. So they might not be working with me. They might be working with someone else to grow their network and area. But what is important here is that you need to make sure that you let your supervisor know that you are doing this. So it's not like if they will not feel like you're doing it against, behind their back. And at the same time, they monitor your hours, whether you have enough, time to work on your PhD and all that. But personally, I would motivate my own PhD candidate to work on a sidetrack project after work on your own PhD. So that it would be a good thing, but it should somewhat be relevant to what you want to do, because it's come back to what Catherine and Felix talk about, the brand name and be well known and all that. The next question is about how do we know which one is called traditional, pay to be published journal or good quality journal. Depend on the target market of your country that you want to go and stay and living or work at. So in Australia, we would suggest you to use the ABDC ranking and also keep an eye on. This is an up to debate topic, so it's quite sensitive. I don't want to mention what is the name of the publisher or the name of the journal. Normally, each university, you have your own policy on what journal considered as a predator, what journal is not considered as predator. All right, let's start with Sarah. Publishing with or without your supervisor. Could you please give us some scenario on when is a good time to publish with or without your supervisor?
Thanks, Park. Before I answer this question, I just want to mention there's a website called predatoryreports.com. is where it's giving you some of the ideas about what can be considered predatory journal, and it could be a good preference. I mean, it's depending on subject to your judgment and university judgment, but it's something that you could have a look to check the journal that you are planning to submit to. About this question, publishing with or without a supervisor, obviously, usually we'll publish with a supervisor when it's something to do with our PhD thesis, because it's a kind of team effort. But there are also like opportunities where we can work with like on some side project with some other could be our colleagues or like some other authors, and like during our discussion, I guess it's still a very good idea to do that, but obviously with the awareness of the supervisor. So the supervisor needs to be aware that we are doing this, and it's not just because their name is not on the paper, but also that so that we can manage the expectation, and they can also expect how we can manage the time with our PhDs as well. So I get when we publish without a supervisor, it's generally sometimes some things that not to do with our PhD, an area or topic that we would like to explore, or a new methodology that we could potentially be interesting, and we would like to learn for as part of our branding, like Felix, Catherine, and Park mentioned earlier. So I guess in the case where you can find a good team, someone you would like to work with, and sometime in the project that you think could add value to your personal branding and your career, then it's a good idea to do that, even there's no your supervisor is not there. So that
All right.
my ideas. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think we already somewhat answered this about publishing with or without. Now, Sarah, I don't want to pick on you, but I know that you had a problem with your supervisor before, that you published with or without his name. I cannot remember exactly. Can you tell us the history of what actually happened? Like, did your supervisor actually got upset with it, and how do you get over it?
Well, I can't. What is I think it's more like it was. So when the time when this when I did my PhD, and there were some papers that I would like to publish from, basically not from my PhD directly, but it's a subset, because I collected extra data from my PhD, and I was going to use that extra data to do an extra paper, not part of the thesis, when we were planning, so I wanted to publish the paper with like another expert, but at the time, I think there was maybe some misunderstanding among the supervision team. So they basically thought is might not be appropriate to put someone else on the paper that come from the PhD thesis. But then once we sit down and discuss, and I clarify how the new person going to add what they bring into the paper, and this is not like the data is not actually in the PhD project, but this is the kind of the side, my mini side project. Then they were happy, and I guess clear communication would be the key in this case, because sometimes supervisor might feel like we did not trust them, or we did not share the information with them, and open communication, clear communication is just the key to clear on the confusion and misunderstanding. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Felix, have you ever came across when you do publication without your supervisor, and then you get into a problem?
No, not really, because I guess in my case, most of the projects that I'm doing during my PhD without my advisors, it's actually I studied before or right after I joined PhD per se. So it's before I kind of like start working on my PhD. Yes. And then the following projects that I did without my advisors, that's right after I submit. So during the PhD, the paper that I published, I already studied, like, you know, kind of like before doing my PhD. It's just, again, the publishing process takes more than 1 year, take years.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Felix and Sarah. Now, the next thing we want to talk about is a collaboration on other relevant projects. So, Catherine, you have collaborated with, I think, more than hundreds of papers. I don't know, like so many papers you have done in the past in marketing and in tourism as well. So could you please tell us about when you were still young, but when you were younger, how do you build collaboration with the people that you don't know?
Yes, so I have to say that actually my majority of my collaborations, apart from my PhD supervisors, are people I never met. So most of the people approached me they approached me. So okay, it's different stages. When I was an early career researcher, so I proactively approached people for collaboration because at the time I was single mom and I didn't have time to collect data. So what I did as an early career researcher, you do have to work harder. You can't rely on other people to do for you, do majority. You're gonna be the one to do everything or do majority. You gotta prepare yourself to do that. So what I did when I was younger, like you said, what I did is so I would write the whole paper, but then because I didn't have enough money to collect data, and also I didn't have resources to go out to collect data to experiment. So this is why I proactively approach people to collaborate. So what I do is they let them, what are the co-authors, the collaborators collect data for me, and then I will do everything else. I will analyze data, write a whole paper. So that's from that, and then I gain confidence and also gain trust from collaborators. From that, then I get more collaboration. So that's when I was earlier, as an early career researcher. So when I'm senior, like now, I'm older, normally people approach me, majority of them is because they read my papers, they cite my paper, and then like the way I write, like the methodology I use, or the area I specialize in. So they approach me, and most of them, like they send the paper to journals being rejected, then come to me. And sometimes they send it to the journal I edit. And then they have low confidence, they're not sure whether they could be accepted. They would ask me to go through, like read the paper, like Park mentioned before, read the abstract. And then when I realize the paper is problematic, and I will proactively to guide them, then same time they normally invite me to be co-author, something like that. So this is a different type of collaborations, depends on the stage of your career. But what my advice for you would be that prepare to work hard, prepare to do most of the job, most of the work, prepare to even do everything. And don't worry, it's okay to do that. You'll build your reputation and you'll get more collaboration and you will grow faster. That's all.
Thank you, Catherine. And also, like what we mentioned earlier, attend conferences also help to build your network and all that. And normally when my PhD candidate go to a conference, we tend to go to the ANSMAC a lot because it's one of the best in our regions. And one of the objectives that all of our PhD candidate would have to do is to make a connection with one key professor, someone that can, contribute to them in the future in terms of learning, or be a referral, or could do some collaboration with them in the future. So it's very good to do that. How do you select journal? Now, there are some questions in the chat earlier, and even now talking about how do you select journal? Do we need to aim for the top one or the ranking and all that? I think I might go with Felix because you have published in quite a lot. So we want to ask you, like, how do you select journals? And how does it benefit you as well, like those journals that you select?
Yeah. In my case, I guess this is based on my experience, right? So when I started my first academic job, like I focused on basically publish more, and then that's why I guess for me, a learning process is basically you get better, and the more you get, the better you are, then you can actually achieve more. Like either in this case, like higher ranking journal. So most of my papers at the beginning, like so my first 2 publications, they are like it's not listed on ABDC obviously because I wasn't in Australia back then. And then afterwards I started in ABDC B or A, and then I have my first A star in 2019. That's like 3 years after my PhD, 2 years after my PhD, 2.5. And then afterwards I have more A stars. So I guess for me personally, I guess like as long as it's in the same area that I am focusing on, which is basically my expertise in the context of marketing, consumer behavior, I try to build my ranking slowly. Essentially, I guess that's how I select the journal.
Okay, thank you so much. Learning by doing, right? Learn from mistake and then build up bit by bit. I think I have a pretty much similar approach. Of course, I'm not as good as Felix, and he's my good friend as well. Okay, I think this is quite sum up. He sum up in terms of selecting the journal very well. I might quickly just touch Catherine on, because she's publishing in two areas of the tourism and also marketing. And I might throw this question to you, Catherine, in terms of how do you select which one you want to go, like tourism, or you want to do marketing?
Well, it depends on, well, there's lots of factors, you know, that have to be factored into which journal should choose. If you know, if the methodology, because we understand the marketing journal is much harder, and now tourism journals are very hard as well. So, you know, every journal has different requirements. You're going to read that. For tourism journals, and often you get a citation faster because in general, the tourism journals editors, they're very efficient and they're very proactive. They're hardworking. Just in general, I'm not saying the other thing, I'm not. So my experience that the publishing tourism related journals get citations much faster. And also now, these journals have become so good, the impact factor so good because they have lots of citations. And especially when you're in the early career, researchers, it's good for you to get recognized. How do you get recognized is by publishing, and how you get a quick publication. Quick publication is about what journal you select. So these are the factors. Either marketing, tourism, doesn't matter. So I'm flexible. If a methodology, rigorous or you're confident, you publish in marketing journal, it's fine. And also, but some marketing journals, they they have so much requirements and lots of criteria. You're gonna say this. It's hard. There's no one fitting in all basket. You have to keep checking and look at who the editors are, and look at the impact factor of the journal, and then look at the editor's personality, and also look at the citations, look at which stage. It's not lots of factors. I do both, but in general, I always look at the journal's impact factor, the ranking, and who the editors are. Because if editor's not responsive, it takes 6 months or 1 year to respond to you to get one paper published. Like now, JBR, Journal of Business Research, I submitted paper more than a year ago, still haven't got a response. You don't want to do that. You can't afford to lose time. So these are the factors for you to think about.
Thank you, Catherine. Now, you are my boss. I will ask you a question. Hopefully, you're not going to be upset. All right. Now, this is a follow-up question. You publish in tourism and marketing. Have there been any situation at this school or any other school that is like a backfire on you, that you do 2 different areas and it not support what you're trying to do?
Well, for me, in my case, even publish in tourism hospitality, I make sure it's relating to marketing and management. So if you look at the journals I publish, either management or marketing, like hospitality and marketing is still marketing related. And even tourism is a management. And also I make sure these are in Q1 and or A-star journals. So that's something I will never compromise on. And for you too, if you are publishing in tourism hospitality, it's fine, as long as they're highly ranked, as long as they have good impact factor, as long as you have potential generating more citations. And also depends on the institutions. Some universities, they want you to master publish in your discipline, and then go with that. But some universities, they only care about ranking, or then go for that. It all depends. That's my answer.
Thank you so much, Catherine. And I think let's conclude this section. We're going to move on to the Q&As. Now, this is a second Q&A, so we're going to spend about 10-15 minutes on this Q&A. We're going to come back to the last question I mentioned. We're going to talk to the question from Sumit. So he or she is in the final years of PhD. So I have some paper, but not in the top tier journals. What would it be easier to get a teaching job or postdoc? I we can talk from the Australian industry perspective. So in Australia, you still need to have a few good ranked journals in order to get a teaching position. You might be able to get a teaching contract, but not like a ongoing. It might be quite difficult to get ongoing. Now, in terms of the postdoc in Australia, is actually not common to have a postdoc in marketing or marketing management. Normally, how postdoc work in Australia is that someone get a big grant to solve some specific problem, and then that postdoc will be there to solve that specific problem for a period of 1 to 3 years fixed term. So that is in general, that's how it's worked there. My suggestion would be to look for the market that, as in like look for the country that happy to take the the journals that you are publishing in. So we have to know the audience. Like the audience in this case is the university. If they value Q1, if they value ABDC, you do those journals and target those company there. There is a question on the myth that the editorial normally accept the paper if it collaborate with the senior academic. What is your idea about this? Now, let me speak on this one, so it's not impact any journal. I have been a guest editor for more than 10 A-level journals, and I can assure you that in the past, do you want a frank answer or fake answer? If the frank answer is this, there were in, because it's a 10 plus, you don't know which one. There were some specific journals editor that when see a big name will be very happy to consider those paper from the big names. So yes, it will make an impact. But there will be some journal editor that don't care about who submit the paper. They care about the quality of the journal. So the answer is yes and no. If I tell you is a no, then I'm lying to you. So there are some journals that will, look at the journal more closely or look at the paper more closely if the submitting author is like quite a big name, if you want to reject a paper from that person. So yes, publish with a big name sometimes make a difference. However, the reason why it's make a difference is because of the brand name of that person. The journal editor might trust the brand name of that person. And if those people, the big name, continue to publish with a poor level quality journal or poor level quality paper, his or her brand name will be destroyed in the long term. So this is just a statement to the big name that like to publish with the new authors. So you need to make sure that your work is good as well, not just a sake of chucking your name in and then submit to the paper. So I have seen that quite a lot in recent years as well. And this is a message to myself to always make sure that when put a name in, the paper should be good. Now we're going to move on before there's a drama on that. Thank you so much for comment, very clear communication and open communication. Is it a good idea for students to do a systematic literature review during the PhD? Sarah, could you please, maybe not there. All right, so I will answer this one quickly. And I think I can speak on behalf of Catherine and Sarah as well, because I know that they suggest that PhD candidate to do a systematic literature review or some type of review before during that PhD. It's actually a very good idea for literature review section to do it. In fact, all of my PhD candidates will in one point at one point we have to do a systematic literature review. I myself actually associate editor specialized in systematic literature review and review paper. And every paper that you do a review style that you submit to the AMJ, it will be sent to me. So I will actually looking at every single paper there if you send to the AMJ. Please note that the rejection rate of this type of paper is more than 90%. So shall I say again, the rejection rate of the desk rejection is more than 90%. So the one that that's reject is actually me. So most of the review paper is actually very hard to do because you have to come up with a very insightful, new things in a systematic literature review and all that. Now in the future, I'm going to do a workshop on it, so I won't talk too long, but talk to your supervisor well, plan well on what you plan to do. You need to have some good insight there. Now I noticed there's one question about systematic literature review somewhere there. Can you publish in a high ranked journal? The answer is yes. Most of the GAMS, General Academic Marketing Science, the recent impact factor is 18.2, something like that. And I think the reason why they have such a high impact factor is because they publish, I call it fashion or in trend conceptual review paper, and they get a lot of citation in that case. Now, if you miss top journal, which likely will be the case, I apologize for that. There are not many other journals would consider the review paper. If you do a biometric type of paper, then it's not very good. You need to have some type of conceptual review or something new. It's quite difficult to publish in an A rank level. But if you not give up, Journal of Business Research, take it. International Journal of Retailing and Consumer Services will not take it. International Journal of Consumer Study will take it. Journal of Consumer Behavior also take it because they have a new associate editor in review paper. AMJ, Australian Journal of Marketing, will take it, but very hard to pass the review round. Now, answer the question from Sarah. I might ask Felix for help in this one. I'm doing my PhD by publication. What is the best way? Hang on. What is the best way to get my paper accepted and published earlier in order to graduate early?
It depends. I guess it depends on what would you like to do afterwards, because and I think back to kind of like the first point as well, like where would you like to do your work essentially? If you are going to industry versus academia, obviously in academia, you need to have some publications, I think, these days, because otherwise it will be more difficult to get a job. And if you want to go to academia, where do you like to go, right? As Park mentioned, like different countries have their own standard. Like for example, Australia and New Zealand, we have ABDC. In European countries or UK, they have like they call ABS or AJG, they call it. So that's kind of like different ranking. So I think depending on that, I think that would kind of like drive what's best for you, because in the end, if you just want to graduate earlier, you don't actually need to publish, right? If you actually just need to get your PhD, you don't actually need to publish per se, unless I do understand there are a few countries which expect their PhD candidates to publish before they can actually get a PhD. So that's another obviously different case. But I think if the focus is kind of like to graduate earlier, you might not to publish. You might not to get it published, because getting a paper published might take longer. However, if you want to get you want to have a publication, and that kind of like depends on where you want to be, where you want to go, then you can kind of like strategize. And frankly, for me personally, it's really similar what Catherine mentioned, kind of like, you need to work really hard. So like literally at the beginning, the first few papers, what I'm doing, literally I do everything, and then my co-authors, they are collecting the data, because I didn't have the money. It's the same essentially. You need to be willing to work really hard and be ready to work pretty much most of the papers, literally, so that's just like, willingness to basically to work hard, I think. So yeah, I guess the answer to this, like, it depends. Where do you want to go? What do you want to be? What is the expectation? If it's just, publish, graduate earlier, you don't need to get it published maybe sometimes, unless that's the requirement. So it really depends. But back to what Catherine said, I think the most important here is actually to work hard, depending on your aim.
Thank you, Felix. I think that sums up quite well. There is a next question that is a hidden message just to me. He or she not doing a master by thesis, but doing a master. Can you publish from a master that don't have a thesis? My frank answer now, they would be quite difficult. Now, I feel how you feel, because my master did not have a real thesis component back 10 years plus ago. It's very difficult to publish that. So what you might have to do, if you don't really have a thesis component in your master, you might have to do a sidetrack project first with your potential supervisor, and then you can go from there. All right. And the next question, I might ask Sarah to answer, because Sarah is working with health and then agriculture and ICT and all that. So many disciplines that she's working with. So the question is, may I get your opinion as an early career researcher jumping into the cross-discipline research, try to fit my research into a PhD program. So it's a good idea to do a cross-discipline when you do a thesis and also research? Sarah?
Thanks, Park. And thanks, Rashid, for the question. I think as an ECR is actually quite challenging to basically try to build a research profile in a certain area, but we also need to be open to work in different other areas just to, because it's not just about publication, but it could be about research projects, funding as well. And I myself working, like Park mentioned, in different areas, like agriculture, ICT, etc. So I guess the key is that it is okay to do to participate in like cross-disciplinary research, but try to find an angle where you could use your expertise to contribute to that research area. For instance, my research area is relationship marketing and marketing technology. So whenever I join any research projects, I always try to find an aspect where I could create value using my expertise. For example, like if with working with like our ICT colleagues, then we're bringing the marketing perspective into the use of AI to like relationship between human and machine, or like how organization implement AI systems to build relationship with their customers, so that basically still when we give like we have a chance to collaborate with people from different disciplines, but at the same time we also expand and enhance our expertise in one specific areas. So that's my advice.
Thank you, Sarah. And I think it will help with the grant as well when we do multidiscipline.
Definitely.
So I think that's very important. When you want to get promotion higher, then you need grants and all that. Thank you once again for the question there. Now, I'm going to finish off some of this question and move on to the next speak with the presenter. So at a very early stage of PhD, is it okay to publish in a B-rank journal instead of A? Now, myself have published some B-rank journal during my PhD in early stage of my career. The strategy that I use is like, if anyone plays stock or, do some trading before, journal is like that. A lot of the journal in the future from B is will become A, or some of the journal from A might be removed, depend on the quality and all that. So what I do is I try to check and then try to look and analyze on which journal have a potential that will be upgraded from A to A star, or which one would we have a potential to upgrade from B to A. And then I submit a lot of the paper to those journals that gonna be, B to A, something like that. So yes, you should submit to B if you can, and just target those that potentially could be upgraded. Is it important to use good references when you submit to the top ranked journal? The answer is yes. Try to use good citation when you try to refer on anything. Is it important to publish only in ABDC listing, although the journal is in Q1? Now, my University of Southern Queensland, actually do not care about ABDC listing. We care about Q1 and all those things. So yes, it is okay for you to continue to do in Q1, although it's not ranked in the ABDC. But you also have to think on in the future, next 20 years from now, which university, which country you want to move to. So we have to think, in advance on which ranking is a count. On to the next section. So the next section here going to be one question per person. All right. There were one question earlier on in the chat today about publishing in a top journal. So Sarah, you have published in the Journal of Academy of Marketing Science, which the current impact factor is 18.2, is one of the highest in marketing. Could you please tell us about the benefit that you receive after you publish in this journal, if there is any? If you cannot say, then that's fine. If you can say, then that's good.
I think, thanks, Park. I think the benefit, one of the biggest benefit in publishing JAMS is a really big learning curve for me, because obviously it's not the first paper that I sent to JAMS, but it's the first paper that published in JAMS, and it's been through so many rounds of reviews, and I have to change the paper significantly. So after the second round, I changed like I think 70–80% of the paper. It's no longer, it's like a new paper. And there's a lot of things that I have learned during the process, which helped me to understand how to target like top journals, and I had to write for top journals, and I think it's really important for me. It's a academic to improve myself, but having this publication also I think it's also good in the sense that it's also helped me to expand my network as well, because there's also people that I talk to at the conferences, or like some of my colleagues, and they read my papers and they interested in the papers and would like to work with me. So I guess that's also another benefit of publishing there. So I guess that answer your question, Park.
Yes, I think so. Is there anything else? Like that is during the journal, right? I think that is very good. I mean, like after that, job opportunity, that type of thing. Grant, connection.
Well,
my question is very straightforward. So I know a lot of people in the audience like questioning, like, okay, these people publish in top journal, like what else like they get from it?
Well, I like so I thought I touched on the connection part, because there are more people approaching me, and also like it's working together. It's easier to ask, like especially other big names to work together as well, like more senior researchers to work together, because we have some kind of like a similar like track record and stuff. So I guess that's part of like networking. In terms of job opportunity, I guess just like I think Felix also published in lots of good journals as well, and Catherine too. So having a good track record, helping obviously also help us to in terms of our writing our promotion application or applying for research awards, because it's the evidence there. So it's really beneficial, I would say.
Sure. Thank you, Sarah. Can I just ask you a little bit before I forget? I already forget it actually. Now, those of you who know me, you will notice I forget things very quickly. Now, okay, it's come back already. Now, is it worth it to spend so much resources, spend so much emotion, spend so much sweat and money on this one paper to be published? Is it worth it? If you can go back again, will you do that? Because I know it's take like 2 or 3 years and so much effort and cry and all of that. Is it worth it, Sarah?
I would say yes, because it's part of the learning journey. I mean, just like Felix said, like we start with the lower ranking journal, they work our way towards like the higher ranked journal, and it's just a learning process. It's a growth path, and I guess it's help us to growth as an academic, as a researcher, because we are doing more quality research, and like also it's also come with more opportunities, like once we publish in these top journals as well. So yes, but I guess it's also mean that we have to invest a lot. And if you guys would like to target those top journal, then I would suggest to be prepared too, and work really hard. Similar to what Felix and Catherine mentioned earlier, like worked really, really hard for that.
Sure. Sarah, there's one question from Ben, and then we move on to Felix. All right. So Sarah, Ben have a question in the chat section saying, please talk to us about the difference submission and research inclusion requirements between journal, please.
Thanks, Ben, for the question. I guess that you are referring to like maybe like the top journals or in normal journals.
Probably yes.
Yeah. So as I noticed, when submit to a top journal, the expectation is extremely high, and typically the first round is really hard. The rejection is really high, so we need to make sure that we can make the contribution really clear, like upfront, because if they don't see anything interesting in the research, it will be rejected straight away, because they had received lots of submission and want to save time of the reviewers. But the second hurdle is actually after you pass the first revision, the review route, and the second, and you prepare for the next, that addressing the comment in the first revision route, it is extremely difficult, because if the editor and the reviewer don't see a significant improvement in the paper, they will reject it straight away. And that's why in the second round, our team actually worked really hard and changed the papers, like as I mentioned, 70–80%. And we also add some more data to the papers, even though our paper was positioned as the conceptual paper, just because we want to please the reviewers and want to make extra effort to do that. So always putting extra effort in for the top journals, especially in the after revision, to make sure a higher rate of success. And for the top journals, they really pay attention to the narrative and the language. So every single round we have to send to a English editor to make sure that everything's perfect, like the references, the language that we use, no grammar errors, no typos, everything should be perfect, because every single, something that's not right can actually irritate the reviewers, and we don't want that to happen because the chance already really low, so we want to maximize the chance as much as possible.
Thank you, Sarah. Sorry to interrupt that.
Yeah.
Now, I noticed that your English editor is actually a professor, a real professor is your editor. So you paid that money for like 4 or 5 rounds of review. So that's good. Now, I was planning to move on from you, but I know that there will be some question from some people thinking, hey, look, this paper that you're referring to, I noticed that one of the authors used to be the editor of the Journal of Marketing, which is the first journal in marketing. So some of them might be thinking that it might be easier to publish with a big name, and which there was some question earlier on. Can you please explain, or if you can, do you think is it actually help, or what did you learn from this experience?
Thanks, Park. So I think Felix and Catherine also published with other senior academics as well. So you guys please feel free to add more. But for my personal experience, I think working with a senior researcher actually help in terms of learning about expectations, because obviously they used to be the editor of GEMS, so they have a very clear understanding about what is expectation, whether it's below standard or at the standard level, and they will basically give us some suggestion about how to make sure that our papers can reach that level. Obviously, we cannot expect for me, there's no special treatment from the journal. It can be we have another papers get rejected at GEMS. So it actually doesn't work that way. Like we have the senior academic there, and then we get the paper accepted straight away. It depends on the quality of the papers and how we develop the paper through the review process. But I guess the benefit of having that senior academics in the paper is to learn from their experience. And having good connection there to be maybe your favorite later on in your promotion, or is also a good thing. And they, as part of the authorship, would also help to improve the papers as well.
Well, I will add to what Sarah just mentioned briefly. First of all, working with big stars, you're gonna prepare to do everything like I mentioned before. So the stars, they won't do anything. They will provide some verbal guidance. That's all. That's at least my experience. However, that guidance, even just some words or few statements that help you a lot, because they are really, their experience is really valuable. So, but then don't expect them to do anything for you, like writing the paper, no, not possible. And also, like Sarah mentioned before, the editor of the journal won't trade you, especially because you're working with big star. With their names on it, and the most benefits is that, the experience, the guidance. Then you learn from that, and then later on you'll become big star. Because my experience that, in the past, it took me a year or 6 months to write a paper. Now I can write a paper, full paper, start from scratch one day, is because I was learning from big star. So yeah, that experience is invaluable.
Thank you, Catherine. And now you are one of the stars as well. The next question from Felix. So Felix, in my opinion, one of your most unique characteristic of what you're doing, being successful and all that, apart from being a good friend, you are one of the few DECRA fellow in marketing in Australia. If I'm not wrong, there are less than 3 people who are the DECRA fellow in marketing in Australia. So we want to hear from your experience, just a very quick, maybe 2 minutes, about how a PhD candidate can prepare themselves for being a DECRA fellow in terms of the publication, please.
Yes. To be honest, I don't have the exact answer for that. I do feel very happy to get this, to get this funding, this fellowship. But I guess from my side, from my experience, there are a few things that I think that make a difference. I guess in my case, like one, timing matters. So one of the reason I would say, like when I applied, it was during COVID. Like that's the first year of COVID. And at that point of time, actually ARC provided an additional rule, basically saying, like, for DECRA, essentially you have to be, you can only apply twice. And then it has to be within 5 or 6 years, I think 5 years of following your PhD, right? So essentially timing, you need to apply, you cannot apply every year because you can only apply twice. So everyone tried to apply in the time where they think they have the best expertise, essentially, or they have the best portfolio. But that year, because of COVID, the ARC basically have a rule saying, like, if this is your last year, you can actually apply next year because of COVID. So at that point of time, actually, like when I had a chat with the research office, basically they say, like, well, given this, actually, we know that next year will be really difficult because everyone will wait for next year. So if people who feel ready to apply this year will be actually less difficult. And based on statistics, that is actually true, because, like, the following year after I got my DECRA, the rate, the percentage of people who actually get the funding actually less, because basically DECRA, I think they only provide 200 every year. Is that, I think, 200 every year, but like there are more people applying the following year, essentially. So like I'm just saying, like, there's also timing. So I am lucky. That's one. But from my side, I guess what I prepare, essentially, like, I think it's important to actually have it's back to what Catherine mentioned, and I also mentioned at the very beginning, like the branding, because like with this funding, essentially the money comes from the government, right? So they are very risk averse. So the only way you can kind of like try to convince them, obviously if you are senior professors, you can that's slightly different, right? Because you have shown something. But as an early career, how you can show them is actually from what you have done. So if you apply in an area that is completely new, they wouldn't give it to you, because like they wouldn't, why would they give hundreds and thousands of dollars to give money to you in an area that you haven't done before? So I think this is when this personal branding and area of expertise become very, very important, because that's when you can convince the reviewer. That's also when you can convince the people on the panel that, like, yes, if I give money to this person, if I give funding, there is high chance that this person, he or she, would be able to do what they propose in the project. So I think first of all, I just want to say, like, I think I got lucky, that's timing wise. But secondly, I think this is when you need to work hard, but also you need to strategize in a specific area, build your brand, because this is when it matters. This is when you can show that, like, you can trust me to do this project because I have done these methods before, because I have done this area before, and all those things.
Thank you, Felix. So I just want to apologize for interrupt there.
No problem.
So the timing is very important, as you mentioned there, and also the brand image of your methodology. Now, you're my very good friend, be to my house and all that. Shall I ask more questions? But please don't hate me, okay? Now, your DECRA, if I'm not wrong, you can correct me, is around the lab meet, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you think picking that topic, the lab meet, is it help you? So my question here is about the topic now that you pick. You earlier on talk about the brand name, the brand image of you, but the topic of the DECRA that you pick is a lab mate that is seem to be very important for the government to do research in the future. Do you think this specific topic helped you or not? And what were some of the strategies that you used to pick this topic?
Yeah. First, I just want to clarify my topic is actually the role of emotion in marketing lab meat. So technically speaking, what I sell is not the lab meat. What I sell is the emotion, which I have been doing. So that's kind of like highlighting like why the brand name and expertise is important, because I don't see my topic as a lab meat per se, but it's more that is the context, what I sell, my expertise in the context of emotion, right? So that's one. About the lab meat, yes, it is the topic itself, it's quite interesting because the idea is like the technology is there. I think like in Australia, I read news like I think soon they will be try to, you know, like sell it to the public. But the problem is like the technology is there, but but it's still very expensive. To push the price to get cheaper, which means that like one, you need to put more funding. The second one as well, it means that you need to grow the demand. And the problem is there is not enough demand. And how to market those, right? So it is a marketing problem. It's not anymore engineering problem. Yes, you need engineer, you need scientists to do that, but it's already there. What is also important now is actually the market. So that's one. But to address your question, actually, like I just want to say, I think it's because of my expertise as well on emotion, not really lab meat per se.
Thank you so much, Felix. Now I'm gonna move on to Catherine on the being associate editor of a number of journals. So I would like to ask you, Catherine, as an associate editor, what are some of the advice that you can give to early career researcher or PhD candidate in terms of like submitting their work to say your journals?
Okay, just normal. First, methodology. The two key points for me to not desk reject papers is like first of all, look at methodology. The second is look at theoretical contribution. Third, I will look about writing. And I remember before Sarah mentioned about, you know, have the paper be edited to proofread a few times. That's very necessary. When I read abstract, if the abstract is not well written, I would desk reject. I don't even go further. So these are the very good points. And then a second one, I will read the introduction. If this introduction, there are no clear research gap and no clear statement of theoretical contribution, I would also desk reject. So if you want to get a paper past the desk, and the most important is making methodology impressive. And even if your methodology, as a matter of fact, not so impressive, but the way you write, it's very important. So there are many tips. I can't explain all, but just make sure, you know, the way you write, and always important, like I said, when you finish a paper, get someone, you know, if you get you someone senior to read for you or collaborate with them, because writing is very important. And it doesn't matter whether your English is first language or not. You know, I always tell my students, you can speak English with accent, but the accent for writing paper must be right, must be appropriate. So that's my advice.
Thank you, Catherine. And in terms of your the proofread, just to build on, I think that's very important. And there are many levels of proofreader as well. I think I touched a point that Sarah used a professor in marketing as a proofreader, and she paid them the money. The benefit of that, at first I did not see the benefit. I was like, why would you waste the money and all that? But the benefit of that is actually the editor, I mean the proofreader, actually can pick which is the right reference, which is the best reference, which is the outdated reference, and understand the whole paper from the academic perspective of the reader. So it's quite important there. Now, we actually gonna come to the third round of the Q&A, which we'll have one more round after this. Now, we will answer a few questions. I will speak two questions first, and then I will throw to Sarah and Felix and Catherine. So the first question is how the first question before that. All right. Sarah asked a question about how do you get African research accepted in the top journals? Honestly speaking, nowadays when we publish, we should not specific to any country. African, Australia, Canada, Vietnam. There's one question about Vietnam, Thailand. From my experience, when I put in the word Thailand, Vietnam, African, it reduce the value of that paper. Unless that paper is a specific case study about something. For example, the first mover in Chinese market, then you can have that. But if it just because of you correct the data in that specific country, like in India, you should not do about India unless there is some specific reason for it. And this is one, I'm actually working with a lot of colleagues and candidates from India. Love working with them, work very hard with myself. One of the major problems that I noticed is that we tend to use the country that we came from or based in as a country of your, at the context of your study. That is not the best approach. You should looking at what is a gap in the market, in the industry, in a context. So please try not to limit your paper on specific country. All right. A data set, you can use multiple data set if you want to target, top level journals and all that. There should not be a problem there. There's one question for Sarah. This might be the only question I ask Sarah and take each of us. So what are the three main points in your opinion if you want to target GEMS?
Thank you, Park, and thank you, Farah, for the question. And I guess this question is related to conceptual paper, as you mentioned there. I think conceptual paper is actually one of the hardest to publish because it's really because we need to have really novel ideas, and that's why that is one of the first things that you need to consider when you're submitting to like a top journal like GEMS. What is its novel? And when we talk about novel ideas, typically when you build a framework, like as part of your conceptual paper, you need to think about different tensions within the framework. So it's just not like one direction, like everything's positive relationship. There should be some tension there, something that's really interesting. And then how you can develop like an emergent theory based on that to justify your contribution to a really big body of knowledge. And when writing conceptual review papers, the narrative is really important, like I mentioned. So my paper published in GEM is also a conceptual paper. So the narrative, the story that you tell, the language that you use, and that's partly why we need a really good editor to help us like refine the language that we use in the papers and pick up any mistakes that we make in the paper. And I guess that's the key points when you consider GEMS. So having really novel ideas that potentially would contribute significantly to the literature, having a very innovative frameworks with kind of the tensions and looking at different perspectives to provide really comprehensive understanding of the proposed concepts or conceptual model, and develop a really convincing, clear, mistake-free narrative in your paper. So that could be I think the three main points I would like to.
Thank you very much, Sarah. We're going to move on to the next question. I might ask Catherine because you must have seen this a lot as well. So this question is from Lakma. So could you please explain a bit more about, this question is one question earlier. So in the field of marketing, do highly ranked journals prefer more innovative methodology or prefer more of the traditional type of framework or complicated framework?
Oh, absolutely. Methodology is number one. So sometimes the topic is like really the innovative topic, could be anything, but then the methodology should be one of the determinants for a paper to be accepted. So even if we talk about the marketing, the services marketing, relationship marketing, whatever marketing, you can always create some new concepts. Conceptual framework or new models, but it is all about methodology. Where you collect the data and how you collect the data is very important, and how you write the paper. And even with the same data and the same data, and it depends on how you conceptualize it, how you write it. And then there's many cases like, the authors come to me for collaboration. With the same data, whatever the model they crafted, I would completely come up with different idea and write differently with different statistical techniques to demonstrate different methodology to make the paper accepted, even the paper, had been rejected. So these are the things that, you should always think about. It's not just about, methodology is absolutely important, of course. The concept is very important as well, the conceptual model. But like I said, don't just think about adding a mediator or moderators would make it publishable, make it something like, make it as a research gap. Don't think like that. The conceptual framework is not about adding mediator or moderator. It must be something very new, very, I don't say innovative, something catchy, something relating to the current trend. So this is very important. So you can call that innovative and just like a methodology. But methodology, it's not just about innovative, it's about rigorous. So innovative is about the concept. Methodology needs to be rigorous. Rigorous and innovative concept, rigorous method, innovative concept, rigorous methodology, that would guarantee the publication at least like a 60%. If you write well, that's very highly likely you'll be, your paper will be accepted.
Sure. There's a follow-up question. Can you use AI tools as part of your research methodology?
AI tools, you mean ChatGPT, right? Not AI tools. Do you mean ChatGPT?
Yes, or any other relevant AI tools that is available in the market?
What do you mean? How depends how you use it. You use it for what? For help you
So let's say if it's ChatGPT, do you see a problem in using ChatGPT as part of the research writing?
No, not at all. You could use ChatGPT help you proofread. Yes, and you use ChatGPT to verify some information. It depends on how you use it. And then, if you set it properly, but now we have debate on how we set ChatGPT. So that's a different issue, but I absolutely should use ChatGPT, especially for students, with having the language issues. Yes.
I think it's very good. Myself also using it to help me with the structure, but don't use ChatGPT to find reference for you because it's going to be a fake reference. So you try that.
I don't use ChatGPT, but I heard lots of researchers do. So
yes.
Yeah, if you want to use it, welcome to. Why not?
Exactly.
And we like, we like authors to be innovative in that way.
Sure. Thank you. The next question is from Lakma. So basically, she asked about the timeline, publishing timeline of journals. So how does it work? Like, once you submit a paper to a journal, so how does it work? So I might speak this briefly. So let's say if it's a regular issue, so it also depends on what journal as well. In different journal, they have a different approach. Majority of the journal, once you submit the paper, then we send to an officer. The officer will check. This officer could be a real officer from the publisher, or could be the editor-in-chief of that journal, or someone that the editor assigned to check whether you have followed the format of the guideline, everything like that. Then once it's passed the guideline, it's sent to the editor-in-chief to look at the desk rejection, whether it's good enough to send it to associate editor or send it to review. The reason why there is a desk reject is because it's not, try not to waste time of the review process and also waste time of the author. It might take about a week or two for a desk reject to be happen. And then if there is an associate editor or a regional editor, then it will be sent to a regional editor or associate editor. Then this type of editor, if it's regional editor, then they might have associate editor as well. And then once associate editor receive the paper, each of the editor might look at the paper again, whether it's deserved to send to the next round of review or not, just to save time for everybody. If it does, then the associate editor will assign at least 2 or 3 reviewer for your paper to be sent out to review. The review time is normally about 4 weeks for most of the publisher. And this time that I'm talking about the associate editor, all of that, they might take, say, up to 2 weeks. Could be 1 week, could be 2 weeks. It depends. Some journal take very long, some journal take very fast. Most of the time when we send paper out to reviewer, let's say if we need 2 reviewer, I might send to 4 reviewer because some of them might not return in time, or some of them might reject, or sometimes we might need more than 2 people to opinion, just to make sure that the process is not take too long. But my dilemma when send our paper to review, my dilemma, and to be honest, is I do not want to bother the reviewer. If I think this paper will be rejected after the review, most likely I will reject it at the desk reject stage, because the reviewer that we use, a lot of the time in one of my journal, we must use an editorial advisory board. So we have just 100 of them. I cannot bother them every single day. So, later on they get upset as well. So therefore, that's why the desk rejection on my desk is actually quite high, which is 90%. I'm actually the highest desk rejection associate editor in my journal, I think. So I'm quite harsh there. Now, Felix is also associate editor there. I don't know how harsh he is, but in my one, the reason I desk reject early is because I don't want you to waste time. But at the same time, I give you some comment as well as a desk reject, but might not be long, but just a short one. If it was sent to review, then 2 to 3 reviewer will have to comment on your paper. If only 1 reviewer come back, then I will assign another reviewer to have 2 reviewer comment. Now, the emergency reviewer will be someone that I know that they can finish their task within 1 week. So, for the sake of the author not going to wait for too long. The review process could be up to 2 or 4 months, depending on the journal. And after that, the editor will make the associate editor will make the decision. The editor-in-chief of the journal will enhance the decision. So normally it will be something like that. So the process of the review, say 4 months each round. So if you do 2 rounds, then maybe up to 5 to 6 months, because minor revision or major revision, it will be something like that. Attending a conference. So let's have a chat about attending a conference. I think we're in here attending most conference. I think Catherine attending a lot of conference around the world. Could you please tell us about the benefit of this question that we ask everybody, okay? Catherine, could you please tell us about attending a conference? Like, what is the key 2 benefits that say you get it from attending a conference?
I think it's quite obvious. Depends on the stage of your career. For early career researchers or PhD students, it's about the visibility. Networking, we understand. You go to network, and it's the most important. Visibility and networking it's associated, they correlated. So when you go there, just show your face. Even first of all, it's about for early career researchers, PhD students to show your work, to tell people what are you doing, and the second, just to show your face there, to make people be aware of you. That's very helpful. And when you become a more senior, you're attending conference, and it's about fun, but also helping other people. So different stage. But I believe, majority of you are early career researchers. It's about, yes, just to show yourself and let people, like for me, and, I go to conferences now, just say, lots of people approach me, either just getting advice or get a collaboration. When you get a more senior like me, like last time I went to a conference and then I came home, I got to more than like a dozen of collaboration opportunities. You go there to give talk and to show that how good you are, or whatever you are, and then this way just to entice opportunities for collaboration. And when you're younger, when you're sort of like a junior, and you get some more senior collaborators or even like a peer collaborators, that's good as well. And especially you go there to know the editors, get some opinions from the editors about things. Lots of things good in conferences. I always encourage PhD students and early career research to go to conferences as many as possible, as long as you can afford. And it's lots of benefits. The benefits I can't just finish speaking here. But then the benefits, just some, so basically it's all positive unless you can afford. So that's all I can say. I believe, you feel you can add to that.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Felix, I might finish with Sarah. I mean, Felix first and then Sarah, so it's hardest for her. Now, you cannot mention what people have mentioned, all right, Felix and Sarah. So Felix, what are the benefits that you receive from attending a conference?
It's difficult to say something if I couldn't say
Apart
something.
from like go and have lunch or dinner with me, which is fun.
Yeah, well, I think before that, right, the fact that I could meet you guys, right? I think it's more kind of like, for me personally, it's kind of like networking, and it's yes, as Catherine mentioned, or like, to increase visibility. But for me as well, it's networking with my peers, like with people with PhD students that when I was PhD students, when with early career researchers, because like, and many of my friends that I meet, that I become really good friends with, actually those who actually, we join NSMAC as PhD students, or like, early career researchers. So I think for me, yes, it is networking, but to build on what Catherine said as well, it's more kind of like also networking in the with our own peers, that like we can actually hang out, not just hang out like having dinner, as you said, but we have projects together and we enjoy doing projects together. So I think like, yeah, to building networking as a, to build more fun collaborations, I think. Yeah.
Yes, fun collaborations, networking, very important. It's actually one of the most important reasons why we go conferences and all that. Now, Sarah, everybody have talked about work, networking, and everything like that. Would you like to talk about any other aspect?
I think a good thing to attending conferences is to travel. And I so one of my purpose actually so this so we there was a time the NSMAC was organized in New Zealand, and we went for a road trip like 2 weeks around New Zealand. So it was a really good experience, and we went with our friends from like IT as well. So it's kind of like a networking and enjoying at the same time. So I guess it's another benefit of attending conferences.
You went with a colleague from MIT.
Yeah.
And I understand that you had a meeting on a horseback too.
Lots of research discussion.
Yes, yes. So I think not only when we are attending a conference, there will be like a going out package and all that type of thing. So
Yeah, I think attending conference is really fun as well. So don't forget some.
Yes.
So yes, you would get lots of collaboration opportunities, and try to be impress people as much as you can when you go to conferences. This is my advice, and I did that a lot when I was younger. That's how I grow quite fast by doing that. So yeah, fellows, whenever you go to the conference, focus on how you impress other people, whoever you want to impress with. When you attend editor sessions, remember, academics generally very nice and generous. They're always willing to help. Approach them. Don't be afraid. Just approach whoever you want to approach. And especially those senior editors or senior academics, the more senior they are, the nicer they are. Believe me. So just go and approach them. They're all very nice. And don't ever be afraid. And the people are nice. Just make use of that. Take advantage of their decency. That's very blunt advice.
So if you were to go back in time, what would you do differently if you could go back in time?
This is a tough question. So if I could go back in time, then I probably would, I guess, be more active. I recognize the importance of networking, but as a junior researcher at the time, I was really shy, and I myself am an introvert, so I actually did not actively go and find contacts and talk to people. So I guess if I could, and now I know from Catherine that everybody's very nice and don't hesitate to contact and to talk to them. So I would be more active in approaching people, and probably would try to publish more during the time, because for the first year after my PhD, I actually did 70%. Basically, I was in a teaching intensive role, so I didn't have a lot of time for research. And the 5 years after PhD is actually a really important time as an ECR. So I guess if I could, then I would have focused more on my research and publications during the immediately after my PhD and during my PhD. So
yeah, and the reason why you say first 5 years is important is because of the grant application. Like when you early career researcher, internally you can apply for grants and all that. You have more papers, and externally as well. Like Felix, as an example, he got the DECRA, so all of that had to be done within the first 5 years. So Sarah, not everybody can choose. Like myself, I also start as a 80% teaching focus in my first business school. In fact, I work in an Indian business school, SPJN, which I'm thankful for that, which made me know a lot of Indian colleagues today. And that's why I like to love to work with them. My point here is that we not always can choose the direction of where we start and just like other people. So we just have to make do of, the best of what we have, and then we might success in thing, we might not be success in thing, we might have just to learn from it and then move on in a positive manner. And that's message to also everybody as well. And thank you so much for that, Sarah. Now we move on to Felix. If you could go back in time, what would you do differently?
And I say I wouldn't. I think I wouldn't. It's just simply because, like, I think first of all, I think I did my best as I could. Again, can I do better if I go back? I might, but I've done my best as much as I know at that point of time. And secondly, I think the reason is not like what my life is perfect now or my academic job is perfect now. It's more like I also acknowledge that a lot of things is beyond my control. Like there's like timing, like, when I get my first job, I do my best, but then, like, I get my first job as well because one of my good colleagues basically let me know that, there's an opening. And then when I go to NSMAC, the head of school, she came to my presentation. That's why she know me. It doesn't mean that, I get a job afterwards, but because I do my best as well, right? But so I guess what I mean is, like, as much as I'm in control, I've done my best, and then the rest is actually, there's a lot of things that I got. It's beyond my control. Like, I'm lucky, so I'm grateful for that. So that's why, like, I don't think I would do differently. I'm just really grateful to be here at this point of time, I think.
Thank you, Felix. You done well. Catherine.
Well, I have to say I don't want to do differently. I think I'm happy with the journey I have gone through, and I was very research focused. Even my job was teaching focused. I was research focused. I spent lots of time doing research. So I teach most of the subjects, as a junior academic. However, I spent all my weekends, public holidays doing research, which helped me get a promotion fast, and which helped me, brand myself, get better branding and, gain the reputation worldwide. What I want to do different? Different is that I could have thought about doing some publications when I was doing PhD. I did not do any publications. I had no idea how to publish and what a publication was about when I was a PhD student. So yes, that probably was something I would wanted to learn. But after that, and because I had no publications, didn't know how to publish, I worked 100 times harder when I become a lecturer. So that's something I would think, do something different, just, have a better, think better, or have better advice when you're doing PhD. Yeah, that's something I would have thought.
Thank you, Catherine. Yes. Now we move on to the last section of the questions. So anyone like to have a question, just put in the chat section. I might start with Catherine as a first question. Thank you, Professor Catherine. By the way, in the tourist marketing research, apart from the methodology, are there other domain determinants for high ranking journal to be accepted paper?
Oh, I already mentioned it before. It's just the concept, creating new theories. That's very important. So methodology, for most editors, it's most important. Is the most important factor. Then, if you could think about something unconventional, try to do something unconventional in terms of the concepts, like creating new theories, something contradicting, or something like contradiction to what most people believe. Whatever you can think differently from majority of researchers do. That will help you get a chance, and something you can impress editor. And one of the things is that you need to understand the editor, what he or she is like or wants, and do some research on the editor. That's very important as well. So even for the same journal, when they change editorship, you will find big differences. different editor, you might get, for the same paper, the different editors, you get different opportunity. So there's many reasons, methodology and the new concepts and something unconventional, not just innovative, needs to be unconventional, something attract editors' attention and to understand the editors. So that's my advice.
Yes. While you're there, I might ask you one more question because it's about editorial management. So from Lakma, so the question is about the journals that require or recommend people, author, to share their data. What do you do? Could you please explain about this data sharing? What's going to happen with it and the benefit of having it?
Okay. The reason that most journals are asking for data sharing is because we wanted to check the rigorousness and to know that replicability, whether we can reproduce the results. And also to share the data, like I said, if you share, other people share, and it's to help young early career researchers to get free data. That's another reason. So first reason is that, we want to make sure the data collection process was done appropriately. And the second is about, whether this replicable results. And third is about, sharing data, having it stored in the cloud just for future use, like, for those who do meta-analysis. And it's good to share. And if you don't share, that's fine. You just say we will data on request. That's fine. But sometimes editors, like for me, I always check your data analysis, how you analyze data. Sometimes I find it's I suspected the process of analyzing data. I would do it myself. So they are able to request data from the authors. So there's a few reasons.
Thank you. There is one more question I might throw through Sarah in terms of are there any external sources in terms of getting grants apart from the home university? Given that this question is come from Australia context, what would be your suggestion, Sarah?
I think the conferences themselves actually also have funding for students to travel to attend the conference too. So it would also be advisable to check whether the conference offer that kind of funding. And generally, usually the opportunities, like funding opportunity, would come from the university because they would like to support the candidate to travel.
Yes.
So
you're right. And from time to time, the government also have sources for international student or domestic student to travel and small grant as well. So thank you so much for the question. Now let's